the interview.
We just got to do it.
It's a wrap.
All right, so Phil, so you're the fundraising, donor relations and communications manager at Grootbos Green Futures Foundation. Is that correct?
That's right. My role is as general manager, which I share with Lee Berg. She's the operational manager. I'm the communications and fundraising manager. And we actually, at Grootbos Foundation, we are one half of the Grootbos family, because there is also a different business, which is the Grootbos Lodge. And both of us, both businesses have their offices and their premises on the Grootbos Private Nature Reserve.
Do you want to go into a little bit how those two ends of the business function, connect?
Yes, I think it does. It is important to explain it. So down here, quite close to the southern tip of South Africa, in a very beautiful, very wild coastline area, we've got a pretty special patch of Cape Floral Kingdom fynbos. And there is a reserve called the Grootbos Private Nature Reserve in between the town of Hermanus and Gansbaai. And on the Grootbos Private Nature Reserve, you find a 5-star luxury lodge called Grootbos, and also the offices and college and nursery of the Grootbos Foundation, which is entirely separate and independent, with its own board and its own payroll. And that's important to distinguish between, first of all, the reserve, which is the land, and then the commercial entity, which is the lodge, and then what we call in South Africa a non-profit company, because we're able to raise our own funds and issue tax receipts, because the work that we do, the work that the foundation does, is community upliftment and conservation work. And we are able to give people tax receipts if they entrust their donations to us to do good work. And we often find that when people visit the area and visit us, they get a very clear picture of what we're doing. It can sometimes be a little bit difficult to explain it when someone hasn't seen it, but you'll have to take my word for it that the vegetation type and the plants that we have in the Cape Floral Kingdom are worth protecting, and our view is wild and wonderful. And the lodge attracts people internationally to come to this area. And the largest employer in this part of the Western Cape is the ecotourism sector. And so it's significant that there is a non-profit company as ours, Grootbos Foundation, that is working towards conserving the natural ecosystem and making sure that all of our work has a very clear human community benefit as well. We're taking everyone along on the journey of ecotourism.
Okay, so how, when it comes to the foundation part, the not-for-profit part, how does that help the local community? Does it give them jobs? Does it give them, I don't know, do they get food from the land? You know, can you explain a little bit about how it kind of gels with the local community?
So in 2003, so going on 21 years ago, the foundation was set up initially with two very clear objectives. One was conservation and the other was adult training in the skills necessary to make them employable in the landscape. Since 2003, both of those arms of the Grootbos Foundation's mission have developed. So we've grown to a team of 50 staff members. 1/4 of our work is based in research, scientific research, landowner engagements, and the work required to understand the biodiversity of wild nature and build the relationships with the other role players in the landscape. So that's sometimes other private landowners, sometimes it is the state and public landowners and other nature reserves. So that's the science of conservation. The 3/4 of the rest of the work that we do is training adults with skills so that they can either work, get contracts to work within the landscape or work for themselves. And we've developed a variety of adult trainings and then youth development as well. So the shape of our adult training, everything we do is underpinned with a green thread of conservation. So even in our youth development sports program, we've worked in kids conservation clubs, so that what we're trying to do is take all the communities around Grootbos, and that's 5 or 6 different towns and villages and a rural area, make sure that we're providing training, mentorship, life skills, small grants to entrepreneurs, workshop style training with adults who haven't been able to get work. We are faced with 60% unemployment of under 35-year-olds in South Africa, so providing the skills so that people can earn an income or build their own company, whether it's a full-time business or a side hustle to supplement a small income. It's very important to us to make sure that people participate in the green economy. And the 3 trainings that we do with adults in our college are Indigenous horticulture, so that 10 adults a year learn about identifying different plant species in the Cape Floral Kingdom. They know how to propagate them. Some of the fynbos species need to be propagated by actually exposing them to smoke. So we say we smoke the seeds, although that expression makes more sense in a fynbos conversation. And we have a group of 12 ecotourism hospitality students who are women, who were unemployed and not able to even find work once they came out of school. So we give them the skills and the experience to be able to find work. They spend a year with us. And then we've got a non-classroom based adult training, which we call biodiversity stewardship, where we teach people who are already working in the landscape and helping to clear invasive plant species, build mountain bike trails and hiking trails, manage wildfires when it's wildfire season, help us with erosion control and road building. All of those are green economy skills. Those teams don't necessarily have any interest in coming back into a classroom, but they do want to be upskilled so that they can perform their work safely. We train them in first aid. We mentor their business model so that they're properly managing their business sustainably. We do snake handling training with them so that when they're out in the wild, fynbos, if they come across nature, they don't kill it. Rather, they understand how to stay safe. So we provide that bundle, that bouquet of real life practical skills for people working in the wild environment.
That's fantastic that people are able to then, I guess, start like little sub companies or use your facilities to start, small companies, right? That's an incredible benefit to the local community, no?
Yes. So it not only is it empowering people to earn their own income, they at the same time are actually helping us reach our conservation targets, which is we count the hectares of land that are being well managed and are clear of invasive plant species. In our area, we are a fire-driven landscape, but we've had so many invasive plants that have established themselves in the area, and what they do is they exacerbate fires. So that means that our wildfires burn faster and hotter and do more damage. So part of fire management is removing any plants that should not be here, that were introduced by humans at a time where people didn't understand the long-term impact of introducing plants. There are examples of the government who even encouraged people to plant seeds to stabilize the coastal dunes, thinking that that was the right thing to do in the 1950s. And what they actually did was introduce a problem. So plants that shouldn't be here, that now actually exacerbate our fire season. So at the same time that these adults get the skills that they can work for themselves, earn an income for their family, have some financial dignity, and contribute to our conservation targets, we also then have another program that mentors people in their business development to make sure that they may not even have finished formal schooling, but they have the skills necessary to run a viable and sustainable business, sometimes even employing teams of other people. But our programs don't start with adults. We actually have a very robust youth development program through sports, where we use all the local community sports fields and provide afternoon sports coaching for youth, because we know that it actually starts when they're born. But our robust youth program that is attracting kids in the afternoon straight out of school, so they come to the sports field and they're being coached in sports, but they're actually gaining so much more. The social safety net of our team of 10 dedicated community sports coaches are providing female empowerment, learnings about breaking the cycle of gender-based violence, learning about conservation, learning about menstrual health. We provide a feeding scheme for every child or youth who turns up at our program. So when children either have dropped out of school or when they're not in school in the afternoons, the safe place to be and the fun place to be with cool, positive role models is at the sports field with our coaches.
I couldn't help notice on your website that you had some connection with the Premier League, and I thought that was I wasn't expecting that. How did that come about?
So I didn't know whether we were going to have time to talk about this, but I'd love to tell you about our connection with the Premier League. So in 2008, which was the year that we started our youth development program through sports, South Africa was preparing to host the 2010 Football World Cup. And at that time, the international football community wanted to identify community programs, legacy projects that would last beyond the World Cup. And at that time, our chairman, who's still our chairman, Michael Lutzaya, met serendipitously Sir Dave Richards and Richard Scudamore from the Premier League, and they both were very keen to get involved with and provide the funding necessary for a lasting community sports project that would last long beyond the 20 World Cup itself. And we found ourselves in the town where we are based, Gansbaai, where most of our work happens, that the town didn't have a high school and had no community sports facility at all. So it was the perfect place. The municipality even had land that wasn't being used. The Premier League had the money that they wanted to invest in a lasting program. And Grootbos Foundation had the idea, could make the connections, and would ensure that a youth development program continues to operate from that sports facility every single day through the school holidays. And so the Premier League and Absa Bank put together enough funding to build a multi-sports facility on municipal land, which the municipality now manages. It's open and free for everyone to use. There's netball courts, rugby fields, cricket nets, a clubhouse, and a 3G artificial turf. And we've been using it ever since with kids in the afternoons. The adult LFA, so the local football association, uses the artificial turf in the evenings, also for practicing over the weekends for matches. And the Premier League stayed with us for 10 years after that. They were so proud of that collaboration. We call the multi-sports facility Spaces for All, Spaces for Sport. And recently, because sports has become so popular, we've rented a small indoor garage space that we call Spaces for All. That's where kids can come and play sports if it's too rainy or windy in our winter time, because they're so keen to come and hang out with our coaches and get their meals and do physical activity, that we needed to find a place that allowed them to do that even when it's windy. And I have a secret that I can also share with you now, that we are on the brink of being able to replace that artificial turf surface, which is now 15 years old, and it stands out in the elements in the Western Cape, and it's got a little bit tatty because it's been loved to death by the community, and the Premier League, and from the original relationship and the company that actually laid the artificial turf are collaborating again to raise the funding to completely replace that artificial turf for the community. So I'm hoping that they're going to pull that off this year. It's imminent.
Oh, isn't that fantastic? That's a great story. You know, it's good to see. It's good to see that there's some benefit. Obviously, the World Cups generate a ton of money, it's great to see that some money gets back into the local communities. Can you go a little bit into the resort angle of Grootbos?
So, possibly the best framework to explain how the resort, the hotel, fits in is that Grootbos Lodge is a member of an organization called The Long Run. And The Long Run sets a benchmark for sustainable tourism. And Grootbos is what's called a global ecosphere retreat. So, because it ticks off a certain number of requirements across 4 columns. So there's a dashboard with 4 columns. There are only 10 global ecosphere retreats in the world, and they're in unique destinations. And the model is there in order to compel or inspire tourist destinations to do the best that they can for the landscape, the community, and the different benefits through cultural programs as well. So the four columns on the dashboard are, first of all, commerce. So you need a successful commercial model to then activate cultural programs, conservation programs, and community programs. So from what I've told you already, you'll realize that the Grootbos Foundation runs the cultural, community, and conservation programs, and the lodge is the successful commercial business. But that means that the lodge is completely committed to and financially committed to always measuring its impact, making sure that it's investing back into solar and sustainable power, measuring its internal community and making sure that Grootbos is the best place to work. If you work either in the lodge or in the foundation, it has the best policies for staff, upskilling for staff. And so we measure all the time our conservation impact. We're making sure that all water is reused, the grey water system and the black water system. We measure our waste and our compost. There's no single-use plastic on the estate at all, on the reserve at all. And we measure all of these indicators, and each year rigorous targets are set so that Grootbos retains its global ecosphere retreat status and reinvests back into it. So Grootbos Lodge is a 5-star destination. International guests, mostly from the US and the UK, travel to come and stay at Grootbos. It's unique for Grootbos to be able to attract people because we don't have the big 5 like the big game of the Kruger Park area. But what we do have is the marine big 5 in our area because we're in a coastal area. And we have what we like to think of as just as interesting is the sexy fynbos and the miniature 5, which is pollinators and other creatures that live in the biodiverse collaborative reserve space that we have. So and that beautiful nature and rare natural experience is what attracts people to Grootbos. And when they come to Grootbos, they do a 4x4 flower safari through the fynbos. They look for spoor and insects. There's a beautiful gallery that we call the Grootbos Florilegium, which is the collection of art that we keep in that gallery. It's botanical art, 120 special plants were identified by our team of scientists and then illustrated by a group of South African and international botanical artists, and it's now exhibited in a gallery. Guests from the lodge go and look at the plants and look at how the insects and their pollinators of the plants have been illustrated. They can buy prints and we also blow them up into macros, so beautiful artworks, and there's a beautiful book that people can also buy if they can't choose their favorite print and want to have all of them. And we're very grateful that all of the money that is generated from the sale of the prints and the book and from day visitors who come for guided tours of that gallery, all of that money goes straight back into the programs of the Grootbos Foundation. So it's a self-sustainable income stream for the Grootbos Foundation programs. And we also count that as part of what we call our botanical culture. Everything at Grootbos, you're going to learn about conservation, learn about the plants. Even the menu is designed around botanical inspiration. The menu is a vegetarian menu that guests can then add protein to if they want to, but we really are championing sustainable ecotourism and the importance of our landscape.
How was the Grootbos founded? I read a little bit about the Lutzeyer family. Were they the people that started it off?
Yes, they were. And so Michael Lutzeyer is the majority shareholder and founder who lives on the site at Grootbos Nature Reserve with his family. His father was an amateur botanist with a deep passion for photographing the various plant species in the Cape Floral Kingdom. And in the 1990s, Michael and his wife and his young children at the time spotted a for sale sign and bought a small farm, which was called Grootbos. It was infested with invasive plant species, and it had an old bungalow-style house and asbestos rainwater tanks. And he and his wife and his brother purchased the farm, and his father said, "This is a good buy. The view is beautiful, and I think there's lots of plant species from the Cape Floral Kingdom, the fynbos." And Michael, being an entrepreneurial magician, slowly the beauty of that place and the number of friends and guests that wanted to come and visit on the weekend, and I believe his wife Dorothy started spending much of her time serving breakfasts. They decided to actually open, for the first time, they had no background in hospitality or ecotourism. They opened a small lodge. And Michael and his family still live on the farm and are all involved in different parts of the commercial business. And Michael's father has since passed, but it was his father's passion for plants that attracted Sean Privet, who was a young botanist at the time from the University of Cape Town, to come out to Grootbos and set up some what we call veg plots, vegetation plots, where you mark out set 25 square meter areas, and then you survey all of the plants in those areas, and you use them to form a baseline of what plant species you have in that area. Sean Privet also is still in the team. So since 1997, Sean and Michael have had these ideas about conservation and how to create employment and training, and at the same time run a commercial lodge. And it was in 2003 that we set up the formal foundation. And Sean remains our conservation director, and Michael, owner of the lodge, remains our chairman.
It's amazing to have the original mind still in the organisation.
Absolutely.
What has been the most unexpected, wonderful outcome of the whole organisation?
Because of my job is rooted both boots in the foundation. I don't. I get the wonderful feedback reward of doing, good work. It's very rewarding to be doing conservation work and impactful community work. My example will have to be a community example and a conservation example. So if I may give you two, one is that in the beginning, in the 1990s, Grootbos had an idea among a group of 8 other private landowners that they wouldn't be able to make a difference for conservation unless they did it collaboratively. The idea for conservation is that you can't put a fence around your land and then survey it and claim that you have conserved wild nature, because nature doesn't see human fence lines and divisions. So the plan, even from the beginning, was to try and build a conservancy or a collaboration for conservation. And since the early days in 1996 and 1997, that initial idea has grown into a conservancy of 42 different landowners. And a conservancy is a loose mechanism of various landowners who subscribe to a voluntary collective where they're going to pay annual subscription and work together to protect nature. So some of the members of the conservancy are even farmers who farm their land or have animals that graze their land or even grow grapes. But our conservation scientist team has been able to identify on their land pristine areas that haven't ever been plowed or grazed, and those areas have conservation value. So all of these landowners working together in a coastal area, along with also so we've got provincial and national nature reserves in the area together. We've all combined our efforts for conservation, and at the moment we are waiting for the final registration of what's called a protected area. Now, a protected area is one level of conservation lower than a national nature reserve, which means that even if landowners sell or move away or the next generation inherits land, there are pieces of that land that have been protected on a title deed level, that they can't be developed or changed or altered, that they have to be protected for conservation in perpetuity. So that building of a collaboration, always difficult to do group work, as everyone knows. The reality is it's much quicker to work on your own, but it's much more long lasting if you work together. So we're very proud of that conservation initiative. The most surprising community program is probably during the pandemic lockdown. In South Africa, our schools had all closed and we weren't allowed to do sports. So no one was allowed to gather on community sports fields at all. And we were desperate to retain our team, because we knew that after the lockdowns, there was going to be even more need for the youth development and the adult training that the foundation did. There was a delay where we couldn't deliver programs, but our programs were going to be needed more than ever before. And we're part of a network called Laureus as well. So Laureus is a Sports for Good network. It's an international network that inspires professional sports players, men and women, and leagues to donate a percentage of their income to development programs. So they want to do good through the professional sports sector. And Laureus said to us, and we were in the network of local sports NPOs, and they said, we've got to do something. And so on their suggestion, we all started sharing our knowledge, sharing our programs, training. Our coaches were training coaches, and our coaches got invited to do surf therapy training in Cape Town. Now, the coaches raised their eyebrows and shook their heads at me and said, what, Phil, are we now going to be doing surfing? Because our coaches all came from a football background and hockey and kind of terrestrial sports. And they were uncomfortable with the idea of doing surf therapy. But our surf therapy program is our most exciting program now. Two of our coaches went to Cape Town for 2 weeks, and they came back with the knowledge of how you use water safety. So our township kids don't have swimming pools or access to school pools, and they don't learn to swim. But we've got a long summer and a long coastline and plenty of tidal pools. So we've been able to teach teenagers who are not water safe how to swim in tidal pools so that they are not a drowning risk. So that's a life skill. And at the same time, we're running this program with a group of teenage girls, which is exactly the age group you usually start to lose girls from a sports program. Teenage girls start dropping out of sports. Surfing is cool because you get a cool wetsuit and you get hurley gear and a surfboard. So the girls, so it's a female empowerment program, and the curriculum is designed to also be a mental health and coping skills program. So the transferable skill that you learn from, first of all, looking at the ocean as a place of deep fear where you can't swim, to going through the process of learning to swim together with a group of girls, working through a curriculum of courage, relaxing, calming yourself, overcoming something that seems impossible. Those are transferable skills that you can take into your home, your relationship with your parents, at school. And so it's actually a mental health and female empowerment program that we deliver through teaching girls how to surf. And I'm thrilled to say that our coaches love it, despite their initial reservations. And all the coaches now want to become surf coaches, and the boys want to surf as well. And it's important to us because we're doing conservation in an area that is coastal. We do green and blue conservation, which means that we're interested in conserving both marine biodiversity and conservation on the land. And we've recently added a new curriculum, like overlaid it on that program, which is the I Am Water curriculum, which teaches kids to swim in tidal pools using goggles so that they can see the rich life in tidal pools, and they can see anemones and urchins and seaweed. And that actually gets kids interested in how beautiful the underwater world is. And that's a blue conservation program. So we've overlaid all of that, and it still just looks like a cool, fun surfing program, which is why kids turn up. And they get a meal, and they're learning all of those life skills and coping skills while they do the program. So I think that's the most surprising program that we have.
I almost want to go.
Come in summer, so you can come and join our surf
Do you take
crew.
60-year-old kids?
We do. We have no age cutoff.
Very, very diplomatic. What are the Fundraising slopes?
Fynbos is the Dutch word for the plant type, the vegetation type that we get here. So the more English word is the Cape Floral Kingdom, but locally we call the diverse plant species of the Cape Floral Kingdom, we call it Fynbos. And it means, it comes from the Dutch, it means a fine vegetation type. It is very mixed, very biodiverse. And our work is to conserve it and protect it.
So there's a lot of development on this land for the resort. How do you ensure that the biodiversity of the Fundraising slopes while growing the organisation?
So we are very careful about development. There is not too much development. The building has been as sensitive and as it can be. We've got very little parking on the reserve so as to not have large asphalt areas. The builds themselves have been as sustainable as possible. In 2020, there was a rebuild of one of the lodges, and the suites are sustainably built as well. We've got carbon credits registered for Grootbos as well, and have gone through the carbon auditing process. So every guest who comes to stay at Grootbos has a carbon neutral experience because of, first of all, the carbon credits that we can sell them, and because of all of our other activities like rainwater harvesting, measuring our waste, eliminating plastic. We've set up a solar farm so that a large percentage of the electricity used is generated through the sun. And we measure our impact as well. So we're very aware of trying to reach targets that make the guest experience genuinely neutral, carbon neutral. And Grootbos Private Nature Reserve is actually registered as carbon negative.
A lot of the other eco-resorts feature terms like carbon neutral or reforestation on their websites, but you don't really talk about those features. Why is that?
We do have forest restoration projects. Those projects are described more scientifically on the website of the Grootbos Foundation. Grootbos Lodge curates a conservation experience. So when you come to Grootbos Lodge, you get a flower safari, guests get guided by properly trained guides who instill all of that experience with those words, and guests can plant trees, but our reforestation projects are informed by our science. There's not a meaningless tree planting experience. We have identified areas in the conservancy and the protected environment that have genuinely been damaged by previous landowners, and we germinate and harvest the correct endemic plants that should be replanted back into that area. So we call them restoration or rehabilitation sites. And guests can come and choose a sapling, a young tree that has been grown from the correct parent stock of our area, so we're not introducing another problem. And we call that our Future Trees program, but as I've said, it's kind of built on the science. So we don't have any of these greenwashing throwaway activities that make it sound like every other activity. We do have guest activities, but they are born out of 21 years of scientific research.
What is the next step? Is there any plans to take it to another level, to do the same thing again, or what does the future look like?
The future is to extend our work and form what we call green corridors. So we've identified other areas that we don't yet have conservation connectivity with, but there is a willingness and an interest in expanding corridors so that wild nature that makes this area so unique in the southernmost part of South Africa can actually safely move. So we are already having discussions with other conservation stakeholders and role players where we'd like to collaborate to actually set up conservation corridors and access funding, so government funding and international funding to do that, and to collaborate between SAN Parks, which is the South African National Parks, and Cape Nature. And so we've got really big ideas of joining conservation and protected areas together to have large swaths and corridors of recognized conservation area. That's good for biodiversity. It's good for nature, and and all of it is based in us building relationships with landowners. Previously, 30 years ago, farmers and conservationists didn't sit around the same fire, as we say in South Africa. But more and more now, modern conservation shows people that you can be a farmer and a conservationist. Parts of your land can be protected for conservation, and other parts can be used for farming activities, and we can all work together for the benefit of all, developing a green economy and connecting these areas. So our future plans are to connect conservation areas. Our human plans are to continue to focus on deep impact change in the lives of people closest to Grootbos. We don't have a plan to take over the world. We have a model that we think works, and we want maximum impact and upliftment for the poor people who live in our area. And we're very happy to share our model and help other people replicate our program. But we have no goals to scale up, the other word that's often used. We want to be a shining example of what can be done so that other people can do the same.
Now, on a personal level, how did you end up working for Grootbos?
My career path to this job, which is the best, most rewarding job I've had. It started, I trained to be a history teacher, and I taught for 13 years and then studied again as a journalist. And so I think that that pathway of history teaching and wanting to work with the community, I taught in government high schools, and then journalism, which brings out a kind of storytelling and writing skill, has, together helped me find the stepping stones to this job. And I moved out to this country area when I started my family. So my husband and I came out to get out of Cape Town and get out of the big city. And I suppose looking back now, I can see that what we were looking for was space and nature and fewer people. And the people who choose to live here want to live and have that feeling of living in the middle of nature. So there has to be organizations that are protecting that and making sure that there isn't just unchecked development and unchecked building, and all development needs to be done with holding conservation at the heart.
So what do you do when you have that space and you're in there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, whatever it is, and you feel that pull to go back to the city? Is there somewhere you can go I don't know, go to the theatre, go to a restaurant? Is there a local town? Is there an escape from?
Cape
Okay.
Town is 2 hours away, so the Cape Town airport's 2 hours away. Obviously, I've still got friends in Cape Town, and there's wonderful, like there's the Artscape Theatre and stuff that goes on at the V&A waterfront and Kirstenbosch Gardens. So it's quite easy to get back into Cape Town, although the longer one lives outside of Cape Town, the pull to go back starts to diminish. If we need big shops or supermarkets, we've got the town of Hermanus, which has got beautiful hotels and restaurants and a vibrant art scene. It's quite creative, wonderful wine routes in this area, lots of mountain biking, river cruises, canoeing. It's quite an outdoorsy lifestyle out here. And we make the most of it and ride our bikes, walk along the beach, and drink our local wine.
Very good.
And beer.
So is there a favourite band or is there a favourite track that you have at the moment that you can recommend?
Very cool South African bands at the moment are a guy by the name of Jeremy Loops. He's quite a cool South African player. My personal choices would be stuff that dates back to the 80s and the 90s, just because of my age. But I think appropriate music for a South African insert or a story of sustainable tourism in South Africa should be some South African music. So maybe even some throwback stuff to a South African band called Mango Groove. Mango Groove is a very cool South African band, so that would probably be appropriate.
Is there a particular track that you could recommend, or just any of it? Lucky Star.
Lucky Star.
Okay.
Lucky Star.
And then what book are you reading at the moment? Is there any book or have you read recently? Is there any book? It can be anything.
I'm actually reading 1984 at the moment because I've never read it before. It's a good book. I knew I had to read it. But other than that, I'm reading Lacuna by Isabel Allende. But what I'm really reading is 1984.
That book is just incredible because there's so much of what goes on in that book going on right now. And is there anything else that you can give as a recommendation for the ordinary person to, increase sustainability, to have sustainability in their lives? It could be something very simple.
Having an impact for good. So little things like recycling and reusing. People often really only come to that later in life, whether they want to even make donations to somebody doing good work. People build their businesses or have their ideas in a fairly selfish way until they're older, and then they start to look back and realize that they should implement more kinder practices for the planet and kinder practices to other people. And I suppose my message would be for everyone to try when they're a bit younger to stick with what feels a bit boring, which is separating our waste and our rubbish and being aware of our waste. It feels like we're collecting our waste around us and living in a pile of waste, but it's worth it. Because those little tiny gestures, if you work them in right throughout your life from when you're young right until you're old, it's hopefully a little reminder that we can have a positive impact on people around us through our businesses, through our work, and we can do it throughout our lives, not just older when we get old and we go, well, now I'm going to start caring about that and putting money into that. We can do little bits of that all the way along.
Right. And is there anything else you want to say?
I think it's worth to check out the longrun.org website. So that association of which we're a member kind of benchmarks sustainable tourism in a way that we respect and have stuck with, and think it's worthwhile doing, and it sets a great model that other people can follow. So check out that, not just our website, but the longrun.org website, because their byline is that we are all in it for the long run. I think, and I suppose another little, the Grootbos Lodge recently won an award at the World Travel Market, the World Travel Market Africa, which was hosted in Cape Town, and the award was for for sustainable tourism, but specifically for our programs for employability and upskilling of humans. So that means that a place like Grootbos doesn't only have an impact on the nature reserve, but it is genuinely invested in upskilling and giving opportunities to people so that their quality of life is better and they can access money. So that award, the WTM Africa Award, we're very proud of.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for giving up your time and doing the interview. It's great to speak to you. Yeah, nice to meet
Lovely,
you
Mick.
too.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Super. Thank you. And you've been a very kind and approachable and welcoming host. Thank you very much. And Nick, if you ever find yourself on an aeroplane to the southernmost tip of the African continent, you know where to come and to come visit us.
The first stop will definitely be the football field. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you'd be welcome. Okay,
Take
lovely,
care,
Mick. Have a lovely Saturday.